So, a Black queer woman born in 1915 was a key pioneer in the sound of rock music. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about a woman named Sister Rosetta Tharpe and her legacy and why it's so important to know about it right now. So, Sister Rosetta Tharpe was born in 1915 in Arkansas in the United States. And honestly, she started playing guitar right after that, basically. She started playing guitar when she was 4 years old and was proficient by the age of 6 years old. So, she was really good. And the thing is, like, she knew she was really good. Like, she is a woman, and you'll see throughout this that she is a woman who knew what she brought to the table. But when she was older, there's like a quote of her saying, "Can't no man play like me. I play better than a man," about her guitar playing skills. So, like, she was aware, because during that time, being a woman playing guitar, even now, women get asked silly questions about playing guitar. So, like, then, and an electric guitar, like, but she was the right one to handle it because she was like, she literally said, "I play better than a man." So she knew what she brought to the table. She learned the music that she learned in a church setting, which was very common during that time, but still, there was just some anomalies. There were always anomalies with her. She was always doing things in a different way. And so, two of the things that stood out about her experience of learning in the church is that one, she accompanied herself. So it wasn't common, like I said, she played guitar. It wasn't common to sing and accompany yourself on guitar at that time. That wasn't just a thing that everybody was doing. And again, definitely not electric guitar, right? And so that was an amazing thing. And it was an anomaly at that time, even though the context in which she learned, which was the church, was pretty common. The other thing that made her stand out was her insistence on marrying what I would call the sensualness of blues and jazz, which she was definitely creating her own sound, but there was definitely a rootedness in blues and jazz, right? So the sensualness of that with like the spirituality of the church, like she just, to her, like they belong together. And so she made the music of the time that disturbed people, but she made music of the time that married these two worlds that a lot of people thought did not belong together. But to her, belong together perfectly. She thought that the music of the church should not be confined to the church. She thought that it should be entertainment as opposed to, what's done in the church is allegedly for you and God, right? Like the music is for God, but she thought like, no, this should be entertainment. So this desire to entertain beyond the church definitely paid off. And she landed herself even in the top club of that time, of her time, which was the Cotton Club, where people like her contemporaries played, like Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway, people like that. But still, the sound that she was making is like, yes, they were her contemporaries, but it was just a different sound, like she had like these grunts, but then she had this church version. And then it's like, is this jazz? Is this blues? It doesn't have a name. So even though she was able to like, make it to the place where you want to be in a way, she still was like kind of weird in a good way, right? She still was doing something very unique to herself, making a sound that was very unique to herself that would later be known as rock and roll, and further down the line, influence rock, the sound of rock. The influence of this unique rock and roll sound that honestly at that time wasn't even called rock and roll, which we'll get to that in a second. The uniqueness of this sound spread even more as she went on tour internationally, so beyond the American borders. One specific tour that was pivotal was when she went to Europe. And during that time, she influenced the blues movement that was happening there and the British invasion. So she influenced the sound as a result of the big bands from those movements. Just to name some of those bands, Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac would be like the blues version of it. And then the British invasion, of course, the Beatles, the Who. So she was influential and she knew it. How do we know she knew it? Well, she said it. She said it in a UK magazine in 1957 when she was asked about the new music. She was like, "Oh, yeah, all this new stuff that they're calling rock and roll now. I was doing that years ago, but that's so cute. Like now they got a little okay, she didn't add the cute, that's cute part, but it was very much like, let me get the direct quote. The direct quote is, all this new stuff that they call rock and roll, Well, I've been playing that for years now, which is very like, y'all are so cute. Like, oh, it's rock and roll. This is Sister Rosetta Tharpe shit. Like, wait. No, I just love how confident she is in her contributions because in a world that will not acknowledge your acknowledgments, there's a power in you acknowledging your own. Despite her powerful, undeniable influence on so many bands, ranging from blues to jazz to rock, despite like you have people like Elvis, sorry, I got every time. You have people like Elvis, right, who were who says that he was inspired by her, you know. You have people like even like black men like Chuck Berry and people like this. You have all Little Richard, like people who say that they were inspired by her. Despite that, you know, it wasn't until she died in 1973 and it wasn't until 2018 that she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So, despite her influence and despite her knowing her influence, they tried to play her face a little bit, you know, a little bit. And you know, part of me is like, I'm punk. Who cares? You know, who cares about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? It's actually low key corny if you're in it, right? Like that's me, right? Contrarian, whatever. But at the same time, we have to realize and be realistic and think about the fact that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a system of remembering. Yes, it's a system of remembering that is controlled by a system that I don't respect, right? But it still bleeds into the consciousness of the people. As I end this, I just want to talk about why I think it's very important, particularly right now, to remember this history, remember the history of Sister Rosetta Tharpe and the history of rock and the role that she played in it. One big reason for that is because remembering is an act of resilience. Remembering is refusing to be erased. It's refusing to allow the erasure of a people, for example, the erasure of Black people in the history of rock. One thing that I've found throughout history, African Americans, in particularly, I guess Afro Brazilians, I see this as well. They make these huge contributions where the whole country becomes known for it, but the people themselves are downplayed, even demonized. When they try to do it. And so they don't feel like they have a place in it, in the thing that their ancestors built. So that's the whole point for me, is to remember. Because when we remember and refuse to get pushed aside, in that, there is power. So that's why I chose to make this video and remember Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the godmother of rock and roll music.